Hello and welcome to Worthy Watchers Weekly, the weekly podcast where we go in depth on anything in the motion art medium, TV shows, movies, animation, etc. It's all game here. And coming to you live from Arrakis today, we have Ransom Tyson.
Hello. Good to be here.
As you can tell, we might be a little excited for a specific Dune movie coming out in 2020 this year by one of our favorite filmmakers of this decade, Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah.
We're so excited for it. And honestly, this week has been just a
fun.
blast because we've gotten some amazing images that came out and then this great Vanity Fair article that I think brought in a new wave of conversation about the movie across the internet. And there are a few other articles that we found too that we thought we would touch base on today. So pretty much what I'm saying is this is a Dune 2020 get hype spectacular.
Yes. We got to get hyped about some kind of movie. Right
Oh, I
now.
know.
Yeah.
And it's far enough away that it's within the realm of possibility that we might see it in theaters. So I am fingers crossed. Please, dear God, let me see this movie.
Please.
Yeah.
As long as all those crazy people trying to protest the coronavirus don't mess it up.
Oh my God. Did you hear they're doing that today at in Colorado Sunday?
Really?
Yeah. Bad apples. Just a bunch of bad apples.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got Dune though.
We do have Dune. And like I mentioned before, there was this great Vanity Fair piece that they did, and much in Vanity Fair fashion, they had a bunch of crazy cool still images from the movie, two of which we're using as backgrounds, of course, today. And then there were even more after that were released. The first one, of course, was the one that sparked the internet because it's Vanity Fair and it's a sci-fi movie, there were immediate comparisons to Timothée Chalamet's goth set photo picture and the one they did of Kylo Ren in Star Wars The Force Awakens a little while ago. So just saying, Vanity Fair's definitely got the gothic angles down for movies, it seems. And when I edit this, I'm going to try and show some still images. So I was thinking we would run down the images first and then talk about the conversation and the content, so to speak. So the first image, like I mentioned, that Timothée Chalamet shot, he's looking just dope on the beach with a ton of these spacecraft looking things in the background, which I'm assuming are going to be the transports that will be taking them up to the base ship that's in orbit.
Yeah, getting ready to move to Arrakis. What that looks like. Yeah.
And I'm going to avoid conversing about the story as much as possible within the realms of spoilers, but there might be a little key factoid that Ransom and I know about because we've watched both of the Dune movie versions, quote unquote, and I've read the book. Ransom's reading it. All right, so then we go from that, and then we go to the amazing Vanity Fair piece that had all of the images. The first of which you get this really cool shot of Timothée Chalamet and Rebecca Ferguson, the one that Ransom's got in his background right now, of them just kind of looking into Arrakis on like a dune front, and they have the still suits, which I'm going to be honest with you, I think the still suits look amazing.
Yes.
I think they are perfect. They're a really nice blend between what the Sci-Fi Channel did in their, I think it was 2003 or 2002 adaptation, the two-parter that they did. I like that design, but it has some of the futurism that Lynch brought in his movie 20 years earlier. So I like this blended style that we have. It's very neat. And it's utilitarian, it's dirty. It's not perfect, but it's still not of a world that we can see right now.
Yeah.
We go on to that and we get a first look at Zendaya which she is playing Cheney, and I am loving
Yes.
it. I think she's
So
looking
excited.
perfect. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
she's looking perfect in the still suit.
I love the quick look at her blade, that like you don't see the blade itself, but
We'll
it,
get to
it
that one.
be
That's a further
yeah.
down because the first one is she's just like hooded a
Oh,
little
right,
bit.
right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we go from that picture into the one that I have in my background, where you get the profile pic of the Atreides family, so to speak, or at least the
Yes.
Atreides head of house.
Hmm.
And man, like I am digging the military look of the Atreides, where yeah, like they look very prim and proper, but they don't look so evil. They look something a little bit closer to nice, but not too nice. Because I
Yes.
think one of the mistakes that people could make in making a Dune movie is making the Atreides house come as like super, super, super good, right? There's a little bit of that prim and properness that everybody has in the Imperium, right? That
Hmm.
Atreides still has. So they're not perfect. They're just a little bit better than all of the other households in the Imperium because, man, there's some dicks
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, yeah. Like I think what's really important with the Atreides household is really towing that line between like, okay, what are they like? Are they good guys? Are they bad guys? Like it's really hard to tell a lot of times.
Well, and in the beginning too, Paul is kind of arrogant, and when he
Hmm.
comes to Arrakis, he starts making the changes to come down and realize where they're at, to learn from his experiences that he's having in the moment,
Yeah.
but to not forget the lessons that he had growing up.
Hmm.
So I think there's going to be a lot of evolution, and that's what I want to see in this movie, where the house kind of starts as this maybe a little bit arrogant way when they're on their home planet. And then when they come to Arrakis, we start seeing the change of pace so as to show why they're being so nice to all of the Fremen and the inhabitants of Arrakis, because it's a political play. And that's the coolest thing. And when we get into another picture in a little bit about Leto, that's what I love about his armor too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and then the next picture after the profile pic is this really cool one where we got Villeneuve. He's like directing on set, and you see a quick shot of Stilgard, and man, he is looking good. Javier Bardem, man, he is looking
Yes.
good as Stilgar. Like, man, I
I'm
am so excited.
I'm really excited to see what he does with that character,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because he's like tenacious.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Stilgar is incredibly tenacious.
Yeah.
And while he is a man of the desert and a man of his ways, he is also super cunning and he's willing to use the tactics of the enemy to
Hmm.
defeat them, right?
Yeah.
And so I think Javier Bardem is the perfect person to get this mystical side of Stilgar, but also that military side of being like a really good leader of his people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we scroll down a little bit more, and then we got three little character profiles back to back. One, of course, Gurney Halleck. Man, Josh Brolin is looking
Yeah.
nice. He is looking
Yeah.
good as Gurney. We've got this cool pic of him just in the front. His armor kind of reminds me of Mass Effect a little bit, but I'm cool with that. And then we get the cool picture of what I think is a thopter in the background.
Yeah. It's wild that I think this is like the first movie where we're actually seeing Josh Brolin show his age, but it like still like he still is badass. Like he
Yeah.
looks like he's ready to fuck shit up.
No, and that was like the cool thing about Patrick Stewart's Gurney Halleck too, is where you
Hmm.
had this really grizzled veteran kind of look, and they also kept that through for the 2003 remake as well. Every version, I think they've done a pretty good job at putting Gurney Halleck as this like very severe grizzled guy, And what I'd like in this one is, while I hope that they get the aspect of why he hates the Harkonnen so much a little bit more than in the adaptations we saw, I'm also looking for that side that the Sci-Fi Channel brought out of his whimsy and his whimsical
Mm.
side. I want some dark humor from him, and I think Josh Brolin is the guy to bring that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The next profile pic on the right, in the middle of the two, of course, we get Rebecca Ferguson as our favorite person, and she's looking good as Lady Jessica.
Yeah.
She's looking so good. And I like this little robe look to it because the Bene Gesserit, they're not supposed to look like, you know, I think the original Dune, or the Dune movie from like the 80s, Lynch's film made the Bene Gesserit just a little bit too weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the Sci-Fi Channel didn't make them weird enough. They tried to make them very very prim and proper, where they almost look like more of like aristocracy rather than kind of a band of the occult. There's a
Yeah.
way to find balance.
It felt more like kind of like a they're going after a nunnery sort of vibe. Yeah. Which I feel like needs to have a bit more of that kind of like witchcraft, because that's what they're seen as.
They are seen as witches. You're right. And I
Yeah.
think this is a good blend here where you've got the hooded robe that's like super long and flowing over the head, where the eyes and all the features are darkened and they're blacked out. All you see is the
Mhm.
face and the eyes. So I think that's super important, because also I'm very curious to see if they go with the Lynch approach, and the book's approach, where, well, I'm trying to think about the book. I'm not sure if they describe them as they lost hair or not, but I'm curious if they're going to go with the bald head approach or not.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Our favorite picture, Duke Leto on the right.
Yes.
He's looking good, man. I tell you, there is something that cannot be understated about Oscar Isaac and his just smoldering sexiness, whether it's him as a young renegade that's, flying ships in space, or as the leader of a house of like regal descent. There is just something so um, impactful in his presence, like just the way he looks alone. And I think the way they designed the armor and the way they designed him having the hair and that really like full beard, but not super, super bushy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It really sells that angle for him being the father figure, and the king, so to speak, that might have some things happen to him.
Yeah. This is an exciting role for him, I think.
I'm ready for another serious one.
Yeah, because the last time we got like a serious, like, no bullshit Oscar Isaac, I think, was like Ex Machina.
I'm trying to
At
think.
least that's the last one that I
That's
can
what
think
we
of.
want to say, right? Especially within sci-fi, at least.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
Yeah.
And it'll be cool to see him get that sci-fi chops again, but with something he can sink his teeth into. Because I think there's a lot there for him to bring to this character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really stoked for it. Jason Momoa.
Oh my god.
When they said he was going to be Duncan Idaho, I was like, that's an interesting take. And then they showed the picture of him being Duncan Idaho. They shave him up, they get rid of the beard, but they allow him to have a little bit of a long hair like he does.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, this is perfect. This is the way to do it. And I think he looks super foreboding in the photo. And I hope they give Duncan's character I hope they do it justice, where it's not distracting his time on screen, but where he's not forgotten either. Because I feel like it's really easy for that character to get lost in the shuffle of all of the chaos that happens in what will be this first part.
Yeah.
Right. So I hope that there's a little bit more moments for him, but that they don't go too crazy with it. Because I know he's like a screen presence, right? With all these high profile actors. I just don't want them to be so focused on him that they forget about other parts that are going on. Idaho's
True.
character is supplementary; he's supporting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I always saw Duncan Idaho as that kind of like kind of like Brock Sampson from
Yeah,
Venture Brothers.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's essentially that role, and Jason Momoa totally fits that. And yeah, I think if they just like really create his character to be kind of like that Brock Sampson, where it's like he's not there all the time, but you get that like those like good moments with him. You're like, all right, cool. That's all I
Yeah.
needed. Thank you.
He can be in and out as long as he has some great and punchy lines.
Yeah.
If he can deliver them, and Momoa can, that'll be perfect. You're
Hmm.
right. Then we get, I think, the biggest change up for all of the characters so far. I think everyone has not been too surprising for me, but then they showed Liet Kynes, and like, I think I'm digging this. I think it's cool that they're willing to make a little bit of a change on the formula. And it will be interesting to see Zendaya's character have, instead of the father figure, a motherly figure in
Hmm.
Kinds. And that's going to be interesting. And I think it's perfect, because then it can show. I think it's going to make this story modern, where it gives more characters opportunity to speak to a different part of the audience that's going to be coming in to watch this movie. And
Yeah.
if there was anything that I could say of Dune as not only a book, but also an adaptation, there is a lot of undertone sexism that I would say that's
Hmm.
there, because I mean, it's a product of an older time, right?
Yeah.
For its time, it was very moving, but you need to modernize it a little bit. And I think Liet's a great way to facilitate that.
Yeah. And I like what they said about that change in the character, um, and how they really saw that um, that character really should have been a woman, in the idea that like um, Liet's a very like character who has very sound, reasonable ideals, but they're constantly overlooked because of this constant like creation of factions going on.
Well, and the crazy thing about the whole story too is there's a message, right, about the planet being restored to its rightful state rather than its abused state for
Mm-hmm.
its spice resource, right? And so the a lot of people will think that this is just Game of Thrones in space. And while that's true to a sense, that's a purposeful intent. It's there to distract you from the really cool and interesting things happening in the background. And I think you're right. It's kind of a metaphor for how we end up getting distracted by our own personal conflicts, where we don't actually give the attention to the big ideas. And Liet Kynes' character is the first one to really give you the really interesting stuff about Dune that will end up happening a book later in Children of Dune and
Yeah.
coming to fruition, right? His
Mm-hmm.
prophecy doesn't happen for a long time, but like many others that are smart and scientific and they know how the planet will change and grow, he called it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just a man out of his time, ahead of his time, I should say.
True.
Yeah.
True.
And then that's the last of those big photos. Like you mentioned, Ransom, there's another little supplementary Vanity Fair piece where they show a little bit more of Zendaya and Chalamet, them together, kind of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool. You're right. That picture with her and the Chris knife, I thought was really cool. I like the style they're going after, where it's not too tribal, but it's not non-tribal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that it was a picture of her just like like having her hand next to it and not having it out yet, because of the whole reason why like having it out means trouble. So
Right. Yeah.
um
There's the difference between being prepared to fight and then fighting.
Yeah.
which is another cool thing about this movie. And I really hope the they spend a lot of time, if not in this movie, because I know the way that the story works, I think this is going to be focused on setting up the universe and the houses. And then the second movie, I'm betting you that full first like 40 minutes is going to be really getting at all of the undertones of the universe and introducing the Fremen,
Yeah.
and getting them there fully. But since they're in this movie, obviously, I'm betting the last 20 minutes will be like just starting to teach you the ways that the Fremen are.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they're always ready for a fight, but they're not going to execute on it unless they're committed.
Yeah. I think the way that he's probably structuring this is going to be like world building, like first half of this first movie, and then that last half is going to be really like pushing Atreides towards the Fremen, um, and starting that like uprising, that war.
Yeah, you got to start it, but not execute on it, because there's a lot that
Yeah.
happens in the book that gets forgotten in the movies. And they're highbrow concept. They're really crazy sci-fi shit that I think you'll need time to process appropriately.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the images look great. And then there was this cool little follow-up article, not by Vanity Fair, but from Nerdist that I found.
Yeah.
And if you have some few after this, please mention them, Ransom. But they mentioned that they were going to feature a more terrifying Baron Harkonnen. Stellan Skarsgård is playing Baron Harkonnen, and I am so freaking excited for that. I think he is going to be dope. Like,
Yeah.
he's the perfect guy to bring this more ruthless vibe. And it goes to show you that Villeneuve isn't about recreating the past necessarily. He's about telling the story for an audience in 2020.
Yeah.
There's a way to respect what's there and what was the author's original intent for Frank Herbert, but also update it so that it's not stuck in maybe the tropes of the time that it was written in. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Harkonnen, it kind of comes off as like a little bit homophobic in some senses. And I think you need to find a way to balance it where the character is still using his position to abuse others, so to speak, but it's not because he's gay, right? Like, there's an element there that Frank Herbert just didn't quite get when you reread it back. You're like, that's weird. That's weird. And yeah, he is a little bit comical in the book, and especially in the movie adaptation from Lynch. Let alone the 2003 version where they had a comedian come in to do that role. Well, comedian-ish. He always gets those roles. But yeah, it's a perfect opportunity to update it. And they had a really cool shot. And I'm not sure if this is the movie shot or not, but there was a shot of like what looked like Harkonnen ships over a Fremen city is what it looked like. But it does kind of look like maybe a still image from like a fan creation. So it doesn't necessarily is the movie or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will be interested to see how they're going to make Baron Harkonnen. Like they're saying they want to make it more terrifying. Does that mean just like adding face makeup, or does that mean like full out like full body costume like it has been?
I think he will be slightly overweight, but I think they're going to do something to make his features look less piggish and more boorish. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think the problem that that character has had is that, if you were unaware, he floats around in this kind of like anti-gravity belt because he was witched by the current mother of the Bene Gesserit, and he got kind of fucked over for it. Rightfully so, but still, he was cursed by a witch, and so now he's like essentially too overweight to move on his own.
Yeah.
And I think there's a way to, because of that weight, it tends to be a comical effect to make him seem small or insignificant or puny. And there is a way to examine how Harkonnen uses fear and how that's incredibly juvenile, right? In terms of how to be an evolved being, a real human, because that's a huge, huge concept that Dune deals with, is what makes us human, what is the drive and how we evolve, right? And how Harkonnen's kind of like de-evolution, whereas Atreides is forward thinking and evolution, right? There's a line. And so you need to make him terrifying so that he's not ignored or trivialized, but he can't be too much so, because fear, when you examine it and when you really look at it, it is silly. It is kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a fine line and a balance that they'll strike there. And that's why I think he'll be boorish and like a little bit overweight, but not like this, like, floating glob that he always gets, where he's laughing maniacally and it's just like ridiculous.
Yeah, I would like to see if they do go in that sort of route. I would like to see it be used more as like, that's not just the way he is. It's more of him using it as a platform to get what he wants, so that people don't take him seriously, but then when the moment comes, they realize that it's too late.
Exactly. There is a cunning to Harkonnen, right? That you need to still have from the original book, because he has a dry sense of humor, so to speak, Harkonnen. And the movies, I think, got lost in the silliness of him being a floating blob, that they forgot that he's like really witty, and he is kind of terrifying because he's trying to play games and manipulate everyone around him, including his own mentats, which are supposed to be the masters of quote unquote manipulation, so to speak, where they are literally can think 3 steps ahead of you, right? They're chess savants. And he uses his, I guess, deformity to his advantage to take advantage of those around him, to make them think he's not serious. So yeah, there does need to be a balance though. But I would like the moments. I think there's a difference between him like making a joke to one of his subordinates, but it leads to something really savage or serious, right? Because he kills a lot of people.
He does.
A lot of people. Yeah. So we just don't need the moment where a certain toxic gas emits out of someone. He floats on back and is like, and then goes, ah, ah,
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, please don't be a crazy Baron Harkonnen. Just be like a intelligent Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything more for us, Ransom?
Well, I was gonna ask, I mean that pretty much covers it. I mean, Vanity Fair, and then like Entertainment Weekly was the first one I think to cover it and kind of like show, but it was all the same stuff. So yeah, that's about all we have as far as what this Dune is gonna look like right now. But when do you think, and it's hard to determine right now, of course, but when do you think they'll drop a trailer?
So we were kind of getting a little excited right earlier in this week. And Ransom's like, oh my God, trailer's right around the corner. And, I came back home after we were talking about it. I'm like, Nah, I don't think so. And the reason why is because if I'm remembering it correctly, Vanity Fair really likes to set a tone for the movie's advertisement. It's the first wave, if you will, of releasing
Mm-hmm.
information about a movie. Excuse me. It's for film fans like us that will go on our podcasts and will freak out about the images because we can pull so much little interesting nuggets out of it because we want it so much. So I think it's to set a tone and let that linger for a little bit. I don't think we'll get a trailer for this guy until the end of May, at least. And the reason why I say that too is I think also a lot of the movie companies right now want to play it safe with coronavirus. I
Yeah.
think we're going to see in the next month what America's willingness is to keeping social distancing. And if so, if it will lead to us being able to enjoy movies again towards the end of the year. The worst thing to do right now is for the movie company to release this and put a fucking date on it in a trailer. There's a difference between a date that's given to like, press and film fans in the internet, right? And the one that's literally plastered on your video that the mass populace is going to see.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
don't think they want to commit to that without knowing that they can.
Yeah. It'd definitely be better to just say like coming soon rather than like being
right.
like, this is the date.
And you know what? Like when it comes down to that, if they're still a little bit cautious, they could play that card. You're right. But I think movie companies do like doing that thing where it's like, here's the trailer and it's out this time, right? So that people can prepare and put it in their minds. Um, I do hope though they don't get stuck on that, like you said. And I would like it around like May or June, where like the next wave of info we get is a nice teaser trailer to kind of set us up for some of the cool Villeneuve type filmmaking that we're gonna see here.
Yeah,
because a lot of. Go ahead.
Sorry. But I was just gonna say that I think it for this movie, especially this movie, we already saw what happened with Blade Runner 2049 and how the marketing for that wasn't there, and it lost a lot of money on it. And I would hate to see that happen to this movie because I think it could be a really like spectacular movie for people to see, but it's also not even as well known as Blade Runner. So
yeah, in a certain way, yeah, you're right. But the thing with the Dune is there is a way to sell this to people that I think Blade Runner doesn't quite get, right? Um, and you're right, that is up to the marketing team to really understand how to do that. But they have an opportunity here for selling a new Game of Thrones in space. And I think that is going to be the thing that speaks to the mass audience a lot. And you can hint at the more deeper and more sci-fi and existential things that are going on in Dune in the background, right? So that us fans, we can still pull something out from it. We're like, okay, Villeneuve isn't cashing in. He's doing something cool here to really bring back the true essence of what Dune is.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what it's like, and I do hope you're right that they don't get afraid of showing stuff because they will need to sell this to people. You're absolutely right. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. But I think May or June for a trailer or teaser, I should say.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, cool. I think that about wraps it up for Dune 2020. I'm incredibly excited. I know you are too, Ransom, right?
I'm very excited. Yes.
Yeah. These images definitely have me sold if I wasn't sold already on the cast and the director. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Super excited. Ransom, what is your worthy watch of the week?
All right. So my worthy watch, originally was going to be something from Netflix that I started watching and getting into. Um, but I realize it's definitely not for everyone, and it's really hard to get into with the first season just because it's sad and depressing.
Oh no.
Um, it's not like that depressing, but it's just like the football one I was talking about. Um, but the one that my recommendation this week is something I started watching just the other day. It's on Hulu. Another one of those FX on Hulu shows. It's called Mrs. America, and it stars Kate Blanchett.
Ooh.
Yeah, oh my gosh, she's amazing. And like every time
Mhm.
she's in a scene, I'm like, wow, she's just so good, such a good actor. Um, but it's all about when the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, was at its like height in like politics,
Katie and
1979.
I were just talking about this the other day.
Yeah, and it's the story is mostly in looking at Phyllis Schlafly, I believe is her name. Phyllis Schlafly, played by Kate Blanchett, who actually went against the Equal Rights Act.
Yeah, because she was
Um,
saying like women having like too much thought would be like irresponsible or something like
well,
that.
the biggest argument was that, oh, well, if we're all going to be equal, that means that women are going to get drafted, and that's going to ruin the household. Yeah,
Uh,
so she got all of these the homemaker women on board with what she was saying, and like created this movement that like ultimately broke down the the rise of what that feminist movement was in the 70s. So it's very interesting the way that they're tackling it, because it's obviously showing um, the problems in what Phyllis Schlafly was saying in her argument, and showing that like in a lot of cases like she's had to deal with sexism, but she just kind of bats a blind eye to it. Um, but also showing the side of feminist movement back then, where a lot of what was happening was that there were a lot of like even just like indecisiveness in that movement itself, and there are like two sides to the feminist movement, and that created a big problem as far as trying to keep it moving and keep it to fruition, and the fact that it also got very ahead of itself and very
yeah.
filled with ego, in thinking that it was dead set and going to happen. So
Yeah, yeah. When movements get too arrogant that they forget the reason that
mhm,
they needed to be a movement. Yeah, I feel you. I get that happens so easily. So that's kind of cool to know that they're examining that, and I think this is another one of those great pieces of TV work right now that's re-examining the way we look at politics, which I
yeah,
think is important for 2020.
yeah, and you have like so many good actors in it too. Um, every time that Margot Martindale comes onto the screen, I just think of BoJack Horseman.
Who is she in BoJack?
She literally plays herself. Uh, they just make fun of her the entire time.
Oh,
She like is hired on by BoJack the first time that you she comes up, uh, to like do like tell a lie to his friend, and then she just like goes off on like her own story of doing all of these crazy like character pieces where she robs a bank and then like tries to like steal like a boat and stuff. it's it's ridiculous throughout the whole series, but
nice.
yeah, good. It's a really good show already. I've only been like 2 episodes in, and I really love
All
it.
right, Mrs. America.
Mrs. America, yes. What about you, Anthony?
I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna
Okay.
cheat this week. this is technically not a show, an animation, well, or a movie, but it's close enough to feeling like a movie for me that I have to bring it up. Right now, I'm playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. It is jaw-dropping gorgeous in terms of animation alone. It is beautiful, beautiful. And it's crazy to think about this game that I remembered watching friends play back in the day, and like how it looked back then versus where it's at now. And the coolest thing about it is they've made this really new revamp to the combat system that helps you play it. And it's less about, well, it still has the tactics, so to speak, of the original, but in a new format. And I think the coolest thing about it is that the way that they're splitting this up, they've allowed for more time in specific sections of the game that were much faster, much quicker in the past. And so there are a lot of characters that were in there that didn't get their time in the sun that you now get so much more awareness of, and you live in their shoes, so to speak. And it really helps for not only where their characters end up towards the end of this game, I think from what I remember, and then also for not only that, but for Cloud's character, because he starts off kind of as a pompous douchebag, and he starts slowly coming out of himself, and there's this really cool PTSD element that I have never seen done like this in a game, ever. And I'm really enjoying that angle. So I would recommend for anyone that, let alone plays games and has a PS4, but likes story-driven experiences, because that's what Final Fantasy VII is doing so well. It's really getting into this interesting story that's now modernized for our times so that we can get into it a little bit more too. And holy hell, everybody is gorgeous in that game. It's ridiculous.
Nice.
There are a lot of good looking people in that game. So if you're thirsty, while we're all in this quarantine environment, the game's got you covered.
Nice. I bought FIFA 20.
Mistake.
It was like 60% off. So I was like, oh, $25 for a new game. Oh, okay.
Was it one of those like deal games on the PSN right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like watching Sunderland. I'm like, oh, I miss soccer.
Okay. That's fair then.
Yeah.
But hey, anyone that has a little bit disposable income right now, yeah, I'd recommend that for sure, because it's more than worth its price of admission.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this week's Worthy Watchers Weekly. As always, the conversation, it's never over, though. Let us know what you think of Dune 2020 this year, and email us over at worthywatchers@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, Worthy Watchers, and let us know what you think of all these cool still images, especially if you're a Dune fan like us, or if you're not, and you're like, what the hell's going on there? Because, we'd be more than happy to tell you, again, why we're so excited. So yeah, let us know, and as always, thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next Worthy Watchers.
I'll see you then.